Hello, everybody. How's it going? How is everyone? Um, yeah, so yesterday I wasn't able to go live because, well, there was a bit of a problem with my camera thingy. Yeah, it was so annoying. Um, uh, I tried to install something so that I could have a starting screen for my live. It ended up that I wasn't able to work with it, and it ended up that it was constantly using my camera. So I had to uninstall it because I wasn't able to I wasn't able to be live with some other um app using the my camera. So yeah, anyways, I was now able to uninstall that app and now it's working again and everything is good. And I'm glad that I'm able to go live for chapter 8 of um of Animal Farm. And yeah, so here we are again. I'm gonna just send this live to a bunch sorry. I'm gonna send this live to a bunch of people so a bunch of friends so that they can see this too. Let me get this link and what's up? If you are in this live right now, please leave a yeah, if you want to leave um a chat message, and I'm just going to while I send this link to a bunch of people. Sorry for the time I'm taking to do this. I just want to get some people in so we get the algorithm working, right? Um, Anyways, okay, let's get to this. Got a message from Alexis Plays, Nick, hello. How long is this book? It's actually around 100 pages, but the pages are pretty long. It's not a really big book, honestly, but yeah, I've read like 600 pages books, which I can read I could read this in one life. It would take a few hours if I just, read this constantly. I could do it. But I want to prolong it because I'm not gonna have the energy to be reading out loud. Reading in my head is different than reading out loud. But anyways, um, let me put this. Is that better? I think that's better, yeah? Okay, people are getting in, 3 people watching. Let's get to this, shall we? There's a lot of people watching, and where was I? Chapter 8, right? Where's chapter 8? 4 people watching, hello! Chapter 8, let's get... No, it was chapter 9, wasn't it? Ah, sorry. Yeah, it was chapter 9 or next chapter. One of those 3 is me, Zell. Nice! Now there's 2. 2 people left. How dare they leave? I bet now it's just Nick and Zell watching. But anyways. Ah, where is chapter 9? Oh god. Ah, there we go. I think this is it. Okay. Whew, it's cold over here. With the heater. I'm in a new, as if you can see, I'm in another room. I'm in the spare bedroom. I've made it into my studio, kind of. If you want to see the lighting and stuff, there is. these lights, and yeah, there's this fish, and there is me, and there's this comfy chair, which is so comfortable. But let's get to it. I'm reading the wrong way around. Hope you will enjoy the reading. Chapter 9. Boxer's split hoof was a long time in healing. They had started the rebuilding of the windmill the day after the victory celebrations were ended. Boxer refused to take even a day off of work, and made it a point of honor not to let it be seen that he was in pain. In the evenings he would admit privately to Clover that the hoof troubled him a great deal. Clover treated the hoof with poultice, of herbs, which she prepared by chewing them. And both she and Benjamin urged Boxer to work less hard. A horse's lungs do not last forever, she said to him. But Boxer would not listen. He said he said only one ambition left. He said he said only one ambition left, to see the windmill well under way before he reached the age of retirement. At the beginning, when the laws of Animal Farm were first formulated, the retiring age had been fixed for horses and pigs at 12, for cows at 14, for dogs at 9, for sheep at 7, and for hens or geese at 5. Liberal old age pensions had been agreed on. As yet no animal had actually retired on pension, but of late the subject had been discussed more and more. Now that the now that the small field beyond the orchard had been set aside for barley, it was rumored that a corner of large pasture was to be fenced up and turned into grazing ground for superannuated animals. For a horse, it was said, the pension would be 5 pounds of corn a day, and in winter 15 pounds of hay, with a carrot or possibly an apple on public holidays. Boxer's 12th birthday was due in late summer of the following year. Meanwhile, life was hard. The winter was as cold as the last one had been, and food was even shorter. Once again, all the rations were reduced except those of the pigs and the dogs. A too rigid equality in rations, Squealer explained, would have been contrary to the principle of animalism. In any case, he had no difficulty in proving to the other animals that they were not in reality short of food, whatever the appearances might be. For the time being, certainly it had been found necessary to make readjustments of rations. Spiegel Squealer always spoke of it as readjustment, never as reduction. But in comparison with the days of Jones, the improvement was enormous. Reading out the figures in a shrill, rapid voice, he proved to them in detail that they had more oats, more hay, more turnips than they had had in Jones's day, that they worked shorter hours, that their drinking water was of better quality, that they lived longer, that a larger proportion of their young ones survived infancy, and that they had more straw in their stalls and suffered less from fleas. The animals believed every word of it. Truth to tell, Jones and all he stood for had almost faded out of their memories. They knew that life nowadays was harsh and bare, that they were often hungry and often cold, and that they were usually working when they were not asleep. But doubtless it had been far worse in the old days. They were glad to believe so. Besides, in those days they had been slaves, and now they were free. And that made all the difference, as Squealer did not fail to point out. There were many more months to feed now. In the autumn, the four sows had all littered about simultaneously, producing 31 young pigs between them. The young pigs were piebald, and as Napoleon was the only boar on the farm, it was possible to guess at their parentage. It was announced that later that la- it was announced that later, when the bricks and timber had been purchased, a schoolroom would be built in the farmhouse garden. For the time being, the young pigs were given their instruction by Napoleon himself in the farmhouse kitchen. They took their exercise in the garden, and were discouraged from playing with other young animals. About this time, too, it was laid down as a rule that when a pig and any other animal met on the path, that the other animal must stand aside, and also that all pigs, of whatever degree, were to have the privilege of wearing green ribbons on their tails on Sundays. The farm had had a fairly successful year, but was still short of money. There were the bricks, sand, and lime for the schoolroom to be purchased, and it would also be necessary to begin saving up again for the machinery for the windmill. Then there were lamp oil and candles for the house, sugar for Napoleon's own table. He afforded this to the other pigs on the ground that it had made them fat, and all the usual replacements such as tools, nails, coal, wire, scrap iron, and dog biscuits. A stump of hay and a part of potato crop were sold off, and the contract for the eggs was increased to 600 a week, so that so that that year the hens barely hatched enough chicks to keep their numbers at the same level. Rations reduced in December were reduced again in February, and lanterns in the stalls were forbidden to save oil. But the pigs seemed comfortable enough, and in fact were putting on weight, if anything. One afternoon in late February, a warm, rich, appetizing scent, such as the animals had never smelt before, wafted itself across the yard from the little brewhouse, which had been discussed in Jones's time, and which stood beyond the kitchen. Someone said it was the smell of cooking barley. The animals sniffed the air hungrily, wondering whether a warm mash was being prepared for their supper. But no warm mash appeared, and on the following Sunday it was announced that from now onwards all barley would be reserved for the pigs. The field beyond the orchard had already been sown in barley, and the news soon leaked out that every pig was now receiving a ration of a pint of beer daily, with half a gallon for Napoleon himself, which was always served to him in a Crown Derby soup tureen. But if there were hardships to be borne, they were partly offset by the fact that life nowadays had a greater dignity than it had had before. There were more songs, more speeches, more processions. Napoleon had commanded that once a week there should be held something called spontaneous demonstration, the object of which that was to celebrate the struggles and triumphs of Animal Farm. At the appointed time the animals would leave their work and march around the precincts of the farm in military formation, with the pigs leading, then the horses, then the cows, then the sheep, and then the poultry. The dogs flanked the possession, and at the head of all marched Napoleon's black cockerel. Boxer and Clover always carried between them a green banner marked with a hoof and a horn, and always and the caption, "Long live Comrade Napoleon." Afterwards there were recitations of poems composed in Napoleon's honor, and a speech by Squealer giving partic- particulars of the latest increases in production of foodstuffs. And on occasion a shot was fired from the gun. The sheep were the greatest devotees of the spontaneous demonstration, and if anyone complained, as a few animals sometimes did when no pigs or dogs were near, they that complained that they wasted time and meant a lot of standing about in the cold, the sheep were sure to silence him with a tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. But by But by and large, the animals enjoyed these celebrations. They found it comforting to be reminded that, after all, they were truly their own masters, and that the work they did was for their own benefit. So that what with so so that what with the songs of the processions, squealers' list of figures, the thunder of the gun, the crowding of the cockerel, and the fluttering of the flag, they were able to forget that their bellies were empty, at least part of the time. In April, Animal Farm was proclaimed a republic, and it became necessary to elect a president. There was only one candidate, Napoleon, who was elected unanon- 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 unanimously. Anonymously. Oh man, I can see that. Okay. On the same day, it was given out of that fresh documents had been discovered, which further reveals details about Snowball's complicity with Jones. It now appeared that Snowball had not, as the animals had previously imagined, mere attempted to lose the battle of the cowshed by the means of stratagem, but had been openly fighting on Jones's side. In fact, it was he who had actually been the leader of the human forces, and had charged into battle with with the words "Long live humanity" on his lips. The wounds of Snowball's back, which a few of the animals still remembered to have been, had been inflicted by Napoleon's teeth. In the middle of the summer, Moses the raven suddenly reappeared on the farm, after an absence of several years. He was quite unchanged, still did no work, and talked in the same strain as ever about Sugar Candy Mountain. He would perch on the stump, flap his black wings, and talk by the hour to anyone who would listen. "Up there, comrades!" he would say solemnly, pointing to the sky with his large beak. "Up there, just on the other side of that dark cloud that you can see, there it lies, Sugar Candy Mountain, that happy country where we poor animals shall rest forever from our labors." He even claimed to have been there on one of his higher flights, and to have seen the everlasting fields of clover, and the linseed cake and lump of sugar growing on the hedges. Many of the animals believed him. Their lives now, they reasoned, were hungry and laborious. Was it not right, and just that a better world should exist somewhere else? A thing that was difficult to determine was the attitude of the pigs toward Moses. They all declared contemptuously that his stories about Sugar Candy Mountain were lies, and yet they allowed him to remain on the farm, not working, with an allowance of gill, with an allowance of a gill of beer a day. After his hoof was healed up, Boxer worked harder than ever. Indeed, all the animals worked like slaves that year. Apart from the regular work of the farm and the rebuilding of the windmill, there was the schoolhouse for the young pigs, which was started in March. Sometimes the long hours of insufficient food were so hard to bear, but Boxer never faltered. Nothing that he said or did was there any sign that his strength was not what it had been before. It was only his appearance that was a little altered. His hide his hide was less shiny than it had used to be, and his great hunches seemed to have been shrunken. The others said, "Boxer will pick up when the spring grass comes on." But the spring came, and Boxer grew no fatter. Sometimes on the slope heading to the top of the quarry, when he braced his muscles against the weight of some vast boulder, it seemed that nothing kept him on his feet except the will to continue. At such times his lips were seen to form the words, "I will work harder." He had no voice left. Once again Clover and Benjamin warned him to take care of his health, but Boxer paid no attention. His 12th birthday was approaching. He did not care what happened, so long as a good store of stone was accumulated before he went on pension. Late one evening in summer, a sudden rumor ran around the farm that something had happened to Boxer. He had gone out alone to drag a load of stone down the windmill, and sure enough, the rumor was true. And a few minutes later, two pigeons came racing in the news. Boxer has fallen. He is lying on his side and caught up. About half the animals on the farm rushed out to the knoll where the windmill stood. There lay Boxer between the shafts of the cart, his neck stretched out, unable to even raise his head. His eyes were glazed, his sides matted with sweat. A thin stream of blood had trickled out of his mouth. Clover dropped to her knees at his side. Boxer! She cried. How are you? It is my lung, said Boxer in a weak voice. It does not matter. I think you will be able to finish the windmill without me. There is pretty good store of stone accumulated. I had only another month to go in any case. To tell you the truth, I had been looking forward to my retirement, and perhaps as Benjamin is growing old too, they will let him retire at the same time and be compassionate to me. Be a compassion to me. We must help. We must get help at once, said Clover. Run, somebody, and tell Squealer what has happened. All the other animals immediately raced back to the farmhouse to give Squealer the news. Only Clover remained and remained, and Benjamin, who lay down at Boxer's side, and without speaking, kept the flies off him with his long tail. After about a quarter of an hour, Squealer appeared, full, sy- full of sympathy and concern. He said that Comrade Napoleon had learned with the very deepest distress of this misfortune to one of the most loyal workers on the farm, and was already making arrangements to send Boxer the treated, to be treated in the hospital at Wellington. The animals felt a little uneasy at this, except for Molly and Snowball. Except for Molly and Snowball, no other animal had ever left the farm, and they did not like to think of their sick comrade in the hands of human beings. However, Squealer was easily convinced them that the veterinary surgeon in Wellington could treat Boxer's case more more satisfactorily than could be done on the farm. And about half an hour later, when Boxer had somewhat recovered, he was with difficulty got on to his feet and managed to limp back to his stall, where Clover and Benjamin had prepared a good bed of straw for him. For the next 2 days Boxer remained in his stall. The pigs had sent out a large bottle of pink medicine, which they had found in the chest in the bathroom, and Clover administered it to Boxer twice a day after meals. In the evenings she lay in his stall and talked to him, while Benjamin kept the flies off him. Boxer professed not to be sorry for what had happened. If he had made a good recovery, he might expect to live another 3 years, and he looked he looked for the ward to have to the peaceful days that he looked forward to the peaceful days that he would spend in the corner of the big pasture. It would be the first time that he had had leisure to study and improve his mind. He had intended, he said, to devote the rest of his life to learning the remaining 22 letters of the alphabet. However, Benjamin and Clover could only be with Boxer after working hours, and it was in the middle of the day when the van came to take him away. The animals were all at work weeding the turnips under the supervision of a pig when they were astonished to see Benjamin come galloping from the direction of the farm buildings by braying at the top of his voice. It was braying at the top of his voice. Okay, I'm going to get the charger for this computer um because it's low on battery. So I'll be right back. Please don't leave. 1 second. Because my battery ran out and now I'm back on. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys see me? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Or put the heart on the thing or anything, but just want to make sure if you guys can. Okay, I went to check myself on the. You guys can see me. Okay, I hope so. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna get back to it. Let me put this light on. If you don't mind, let me know if you can, just in case. Okay, let's get back to it. Where were we? It was the first time that they had ever seen Benjamin excited. Indeed, it was the first time that anyone had ever seen him gallop. Quick, quick! He shouted, waiting for the orders from the pig. Without waiting for the orders from the pig, the animals broke off work and raced back to the farm buildings. Sure enough, there in the yard was a large closed van drawn by two horses, with lettering on its side, and a sly-looking man in a low-crowned bowler hat sitting on the driver's seat. Oh, it's okay. Sure enough, there in the yard was a large closed van, drawn by two horses with lettering on its side, and a sly-looking man in a low-crowned bowler hat sitting on the driver's seat. And Boxer's stall was empty. The animals crowded around the van. "Goodbye, Boxer!" They caroused. caroused. "Goodbye, fools! Fools!" shouted Benjamin, prancing prancing round them and stamping the earth with his small hoofs. "Fools! Do you not see what is written on the side of the van?" That gave the animals a pause, and there was a hush. Muriel began to spell out the words, but Benjamin pushed her aside, and in the midst of deadly silence he read, "Alfred Simmons, horse slaughterer and glue boiler, Wellington, dealer in the hides and bone meal. Kennels supplied. Do you not understand what that means? They're taking Boxer to the knackers." A cry of horror burst from all the animals. At this moment, the man on the box whipped up his horses, and the van moved out of the yard at a smart trot. All the animals followed, crying at the top of their voices. Clover forced her way to the front. The van began to gather speed. Clover tried to stir her stout limbs to gallop, and achieved a canter. "Boxer!" she cried. "Boxer! Boxer! Boxer!" And just at this moment, as though he had heard the uproar outside, Boxer's face, with a white stripe down his nose, appeared at a small window at the back of the van. "Boxers!" cried Clover in a terrible voice. "Boxer, get out! Get out quickly! They're taking you to your death!" All the animals took up the cry of "Get out, Boxer! Get out!" but the van was already gathering speed and drawing away from them. He was uncertain whether Boxer had understood what Clover said, but a moment later his face appeared from the window, and there was the sound of a tremendous drumming of hoofs inside the van. He was trying to kick his way out. The time he had, the time had been when few kicks from Boxer's hoof would have smashed the van to match with. But alas, his strength had left him, and in a few moments the sound of drumming hoofs grew fainter and died away. In desperation, the animals began appealing to the two horses, which drew the van to a stop. "Comrades! Comrades!" they shouted. "Don't take your brother to his death!" But the stupid brutes, too ignorant to realize what was happening, merely set back their ears and quickened their pace. Boxer's face did not reappear at the window. Too late, someone thought of racing ahead and shouting the five barred gate. But in another moment, the van was through it and rapidly disappearing down the road. Boxer was never seen again. 3 days later, it was announced that he had died in the hospital at Wellington, in spite of receiving every attention a horse could have. Squealer came to announce the news to the others. He had he said, been present during Boxer's last hours. It was the most affecting sight I have ever seen. It was the most affecting sight I have ever seen, said Squealer, lifting his trotter and wiping away a tear. I was at his bedside at the very last, at and at the end, almost too weak to speak, he whispered in my ear that his sorrow was to have passed on before the windmill was finished. Forward, comrades, he whispered. Forward in the name of the rebellion. Long live Animal Farm. Long live Comrade Napoleon. Napoleon is always right. Those were his very last words, comrades. Here Squealer's demeanor suddenly changed. He fell silent for a moment, and his eyes darted suspicious glances from side to side before he proceeded. It had come to his knowledge, he said, that a foolish and wicked rumor had been circulated at the time of Boxer's removal. Some animals had noticed that the van which took Boxer away was marked "horse slaughterer," and had actually jumped to the conclusion that Boxer was being sent to the knackers. It was almost unbelievable, said Squealer, that any animal could be so stupid. Surely, he cried indignantly. Wait, sorry, I need to make the voice. Um, it was almost it was almost unbelievable, said Squealer, that any animal could be so stupid. Surely, he cried indignantly, whisking his tail and skipping from side to side. Surely they knew their beloved leader, Comrade Napoleon, better than that. But the explanation was very simple. But But the explanation was very simple. The van had previously been property of the knacker and had been bought by the veterinary, veter, veterinary surgeon who has not yet painted the old name out. That was how the mistake was risen. The animals were enormously relieved to hear this, and when Squealer went on to give further graphic details of Boxer's deathbed, the admirable care which he had received, the expensive medicines for which Napoleon had paid with without a thought as to the cost, their last doubts disappeared, and the sorrow that they had felt for their comrade's death was tempted by the thought that at least he had died happy. Napoleon himself appeared at the meeting and the following Sunday morning and pronounced a short oration in Boxer's honor. It had not been possible, he said, It had not been possible, he said, to bring back their lamented comrade's remains from the interment on the farm, but he had ordered a large wreath to be made from the laurels in the farmhouse garden, and sent down to the to the place to be placed on Boxer's grave. And in a few days' time the pigs intended to hold a memorial banquet in Boxer's honor. Napoleon ended his speech with a reminder of Boxer's two favorite maxims: "I will work harder," and "Comrade Napoleon is always right." Maxims, he said, which every animal should do well to adopt to it as his own. And on the day appointed for the banquet, a grocer's van drove up from Wellington and delivered a large wooden crate at the farmhouse. That night there was a sound of uproarious singing, which was followed by what sounded like a violent quarrel, and ended at about 11 o'clock with a tremendous crash of glass. No one stirred in the farmhouse before noon on the following day, and word went round that from somewhere or other, the pigs had acquired the money to buy themselves another case of whiskey. I think I got Zori, you're here? Glad you can hear me. Um, you just would like to remind whoever is watching, um, if you are able to, and if you want to, you can give a message on the live chat and I'll be able to see it. And I will answer it whenever I take a glance up, which is every once in a while. Anyways, let me check how long the next chapter is. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, this is the last chapter. Okay, guys, tell me, should I read this last chapter now, or should I read it tomorrow in the live reading? So do we finish this book today or tomorrow? Do we go with one more or do we do it today? Let me know, guys. I'll give 1 minute, let's say. See if anybody. Oh, someone else came. Whoever came here, I would just like to say we're on the last chapter, and I'm wondering if I should read this last chapter today, or should I read this last chapter tomorrow in a live reading for the final live reading? Let me know. Because if today, maybe it'll take another maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes. No one, whoever is watching. Let me see. Uh, okay, I guess I'll read this last chapter, shall Oh, let me see. Let me see. I forgot how many pages. I don't know. Should I read this last chapter or no? Come on, last chance. Anybody give me a message on the chat. Just let me know. Oh, Zel, what? Should I read this last chapter today? It's the last chapter of the book, or should I read it tomorrow as the final live reading? Whatever, I don't mind. No, guys, you can't say you can't say whatever. I can't make this choice by myself. It needs to be the viewer to make the choice. I can't choose. Tomorrow? Zell says tomorrow. Zori is typing. Sure, okay, that's 1-1. One of you is gonna have to change your mind. Come on. I don't know. Today, I don't mind. Okay, so it's today, is that it? Or okay, today. Zal says today. So we're doing it today. Today. Okay, yes, Al, I get it. Okay, so guys, last chapter of this book. It's been a journey on this channel. Let's get through this. Let me just 1 second, I'll be right back. Last chapter, guys. Oh, 4 people here. You're witnessing last chapter of Animal Farm. If you haven't listened to the full thing with me, go and if you want to go to the beginning, I made a playlist, and yeah, let's get to it. Let's see. Chapter 10. Years passed. The seasons came and went. The short animal lives fled by. A time came when there was no one who remembered the old days before the rebellion, except Clover, Benjamin, Moses, the raven, and a number of the pigs. Muriel was dead. Bluebell, Jesse, and Pincher were dead. Jones too was dead. He had died in an inebriates home in another part of the country. Snowball was forgotten. Boxer was forgotten, except by the few who had known him. Clover was an old stout mare now, stiff in the joints and with a tendency to roomy roomy eyes. She was 2 years past retiring age, but in fact no animal had ever actually retired. The talk of setting aside a corner of the pasture for the superannuated animals had long since been dropped. Napoleon was now a mature boar of 24 stone. Squealer was so fat that he could with difficulty see out of his eyes. Only old Benjamin was much the same as ever, except for his little greer about the muzzle, and since Roxer's death, more morose and taciturn than ever. There were many more creatures on the farm now, though the increase was not as so great as had been expected in the earlier years. Many animals had been born to whom the rebellion was only a dim tradition, passed on by word of mouth, and others had been bought who had never heard mention of such a thing before their arrival. The farm possessed 3 horses now besides Clover. They were fine, upstanding beasts, willing workers and good comrades, but very stupid. None of them proved able to learn the alphabet, and saw the green flag fluttering at the masthead. Their hearts swelled with imperishable pride, and the talk turned always towards the old heroic days of the expulsion of Jones, the writing of the 7 Commandments, the great battles in which the human invaders had been defeated. None of the old dreams had been abandoned. The Republic of the animals, with Major had foretold when the green fields of The Republic of the Animals, which Major had foretold when the fields of England should be untrodden by human feet, was still believed in. Some day it was coming. It might not be soon, it might not be within the lifetime of any animal now living, but still it was coming. Even the tune of Beasts of England was perhaps hummed secretly here and there. At any rate, it was a fact. It was a fact that every animal on the farm knew it, though no one would have dared to sing it aloud. It might be that their lives were hard and that not all of their hopes had been fulfilled, but they were conscious that they were not as other animals. If they went hungry, it was not from feeding tyrannical human beings. If they worked hard, at least they worked for themselves. No creature among them went upon two legs. No creature called any other creature master. All animals were equal. One day in early summer, Squealer ordered the sheep to follow him and led them out to a piece of waste ground at the other end of the farm, which had become overgrown with birds' saplings. The sheep spent the whole day there, browsing at the leaves under Squealer's supervision. In the evening he returned to the farmhouse himself, but as it was warm weather, told the sheep to stay where they were. It ended with their remaining there for the whole week, during which time the other animals saw nothing of them. Squealer was with them for the greater part of every day. He was, he said, teaching them to sing a new song for which privacy was needed. It was just after the sheep had returned on a pleasant evening, when the animals had finished work and were making their way back to the farm buildings, that the terrified terrified neighbor the terrified ne- neighing of a horse sounded from the yard. Startled, the animals stopped in their tracks. It was Clover's voice. She neighed away again, and all the animals broke into a gallop and rushed into the yard. Then they saw that Clover had seen. Then they saw what Clover had seen. It was a pig walking on his hind legs. Yes, it was Squealer, a little awkwardly, as though not quite used to supporting his considerable bulk in that position, but with perfect balance he was strolling around across the yard, and a moment later, out from the door of the farm house came a long file of pigs all walking on their hind legs. Some did it better than others, one or two even a trifle unsteady and looked as though they would have liked the support of a stick, but every one of them made his way right around the yard successfully, and made and finally there was a tremendous baying of dogs and shrill crowing from the black cockerel, and out came Napoleon himself, majestically upright, casting haughty glances from side to side, and with his dogs gam- gambolling round him, he carried a whip in his trotter. There was a deadly silence. Amazed, terrified, huddling together, the animals watched the long line of pigs march slowly round the yard. It was as though the world had turned upside down. Then there came a moment when the first shock had worn off, and when, in spite of everything, in spite of their terror of the dogs and of the habit developed through the years of never complaining, never criticizing, no matter what they might have uttered, no matter what had happened, they might have uttered some word of protest. But just at that moment, as though at a signal, all the sheep burst out into a tremendous bleating of four legs good, two legs better, four legs good, two legs better, four legs good, two legs better. It went on for 5 minutes without stopping, and by the time the sheep had quieted down, the chance to utter any protest had passed, for the pigs had marched back into the farmhouse. Benjamin felt a nose nuzzling at his shoulder. He looked round. It was Clover. Her old eyes looked dimmer than ever. Without saying anything, she tugged gently at his mane and led him around to the end of the big barn where the seven commandments were written. For a minute or two they stood gazing at the tarted wall with its white lettering. My sight is falling, she finally said. Even when I was young, I could not read what was written there. But it appears to me that the wall looks different. Are the seven commandments the same as they used to be, Benjamin? For once Benjamin consented to break his role, and he read out to her what was written on the wall. And there was nothing there now except a single commandment. It ran, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. After that, it did not seem strange when the next day the pigs who were supervising the work of the farm all carried whips in their trotters. It did not seem strange to learn that the pigs had brought themselves a wireless set and were arranging to install a telephone, and had taken out subscriptions to John Bull, Titbits, and Daily Mirror. It did not seem strange that when Napoleon was soon strolling in the farmhouse garden with a pipe in his mouth. No, not even when the pigs took Jones's clothes out of the wardrobe and put them on, Napoleon himself appearing in a black coat, rat catcher breeches, and leather leggings, while his favorite so appeared in a watered silk, silk dress, which Mrs. Jones had been used to wear on Sundays. We can see you. I'm at work watching and listening. You're at work now? It's late. Well, I'm on the last chapter, so yeah, coming to an end. I hope you enjoy this last, what, 3 pages that are left, or something like that. Anyways, let's get through this. Napoleon himself, in a black coat, rat catcher breeches, and leather leggings, while his favorite sew appeared in the watered silk dress with which Mrs. Jones had been used to wear on Sundays. A week later in the afternoon, a number of dog carts drove up the farm. A deputation of neighboring farmers had been invited to make a tour of inspection. They were shown all over the farm and expressed great admiration for everything they saw, especially the windmill. The animals were weeding the turnip fields. They worked diligently, raising their faces from the ground, and not knowing whether to be more frightened of the pigs or the human visitors. That evening, loud laughter and bursts of singing came from the farmhouse, and suddenly, at the sound of the mingled voices, the animals were stricken with curiosity. What could be happening in there? Now that for the first time animals and human beings were meeting on terms of equality? With one accord, they began to creep as quietly as possible into the farmhouse garden. At the gate they passed, half frightened to go on, but the clover led the way in. They tiptoed on to the house, and such animals as they were tall enough peered in at the dining room window. There, round the table, sat half a dozen farmers and half a dozen of the more eminent pigs, Napoleon himself occupying the seat of honor at the head of the table. The pigs appeared completely at ease in their chairs. The company had been enjoying a game of cards, but had broken off for the moment, evidently in order to drink a toast. A large jug was circulating, and the mugs were being refilled with beer. No one noticed the wondering faces of the animals that gazed at the window. Mr. Pillington of Foxwood had stood up, his mug in his hand. In a moment, he said he would ask the present company to drink a toast, but before doing so, there were a few words that he felt it incumbent upon him incumbent upon him to say. It was a source of great satisfaction to him, he said, and he was sure, to all others present, to feel that a long period of mistrust and misunderstanding had now come to an end. There had been a time, not that he or any other present company had shared such sentiments, but there had been a time when the respected proprietors of Animal Farm had been regarded, he would not say with hostility, but perhaps with certain measure of misgiving by their human neighbors. Unfortunate incidents had occurred, mistaken ideas had been current. It had been felt that the existence of a farm owned and operated by pigs was somehow abnormal, and it was liable to have an unsettling effect in the neighbor. Too many farmers had assumed without due enquiry that on such a farm a spirit of license and indiscipline would prevail. They had been nervous about the effects upon their own farms, or even upon their human employees. But all such doubts were now dispelled. Today, today he and his friends had visited Animal Farm and inspected every inch of it with their own eyes. And what did they find? Not only the most up-to-date methods, but a discipline and an orderly, orderly, orderliness which should be an example to all farmers everywhere. He believed that he was right in saying that the lower animals on Animal Farm did not work and received less food than any animals in the country. Indeed, he and his fellow visitors today today had observed many features which had intended to introduce on their own farms immediately. He would end his remarks, he said, with empathizing once again the friendly feelings of subsisted and ought to subsist between Animal Farm and its neighbors. Between pigs and human beings there was not, and there need not be any clash of interests what, whatsoever. Their struggles and their difficulties were one. Was not the labor problem the same everywhere? Here it became apparent that Mr. Pilkington was about to spring some carefully prepared witticism on the company, but for a moment he was too overcome by amusement to able to utter it. After much choking, during which his various chins turned purple, he managed to get it out. If you are if you are lower animals to contend with, he said. We have our lower classes. This bon mot set the table in a roar, and Mr. Pilkington again congratulated the pigs on the low rations, the long working hours, and the general absence of pampering which he had observed on Animal Farm. And now he said finally, he would ask the company to risk to their feet and make certain that their glasses were full. Gentlemen, concluded Mr. Pilkington, gentlemen, I give you a toast to the prosperity of Animal Farm. There was enthusiastic cheering and stamping of feet. Napoleon was so gratified that he left his place and came around the table to clink his mug against Mr. Pilkington's before emptying it. When the cheering had died down, Napoleon, who had remained on his feet, in, intimated that he too had a few words to say. Like all of Napoleon's speeches, it was short and to the point. He too, he said, was happy that the period of misunderstanding was to an end. For a long time there had been rumors that circulated. He had reason to think by some malignant enemy that there was something subversive and even revolutionary in the outlook of himself and his colleagues. They had been credited with attempting to stir up rebellion among the animals on neighboring farms. Nothing could be further from the truth. Their sole wish now and in the past was to live at peace and in normal business relations with their neighbors. Last 2 pages, one and a half, I mean. Let's get through this. This farm, which he had the honor to control, he added, was a cooperative enterprise. The title deeds, which were in his own possession, were owned by the pigs jointly. He did not believe, he said, that any of the old suspicions still lingered, that certain changes had been made recently in the routine of the farm, which should have effect of prompting confidence still further. Hitherto, the animals on the farm had had a rather foolish custom of addressing one another as comrade, which was to be suppressed. There had also been a very strange custom, whose origin was unknown, of marching every Sunday morning past a boar's skull, which was nailed to a post in the garden. This too would be suppressed, and the skull had already been buried. His visitors might have observed too the green flag which flew from the masthead. If so, they would perhaps have noted that the white hoof and the horn with which it had previously been marked had now been removed. It would be a plain green flag from now onwards. He had only one criticism, he said, to make of excellent, Mr. Pilkington's excellent and neighborly speech. Mr. Pilkington had referred throughout to Animal Farm. He could not, of course, know, for he, Napoleon, was only now for the first time announcing that the name Animal Farm had been abolished. Henceforth, the farm was to be known as the Manor Farm, which he believed was its correct original name. Gentlemen, concluded Napoleon, it will I will give you the same toast as before, but in different form. Fill your glasses to the brim. Gentlemen, here is my toast. To the prosperity of the Manor Farm. There was the same hearty cheering as before, and the mugs were emptied to the dregs. But as the animals outside gazed at the scene, it seemed to them that some strange thing has happened. What was it that had altered in the face of the pigs? Clover's old dim eyes flitted from one face to another. Some of them had 5 chins, some of them had 4, some of them had 3. But it was but was but what was it that seemed to be melting and changing? Then, the applause having come to an end, the company took up their cards and continued the game that had been interrupted, and the animals crept silently away. But they had not gone 20 yards when they stopped short. An uproar of voices was coming from the farmhouse. They rushed back and looked through the window again. Yes, a violent quarrel was in progress. There was shouting, bangings on the table, sharp, suspicious glances, furious denials. The source of the trouble appeared to be that Napoleon and Mr. Pilkington had each played an ace of spades simultaneously. 12 voices were shouting in anger, and they were all alike. No question now what had happened to the faces of the pigs. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again. But already it was impossible to say which was which. The end. And that is it for Animal Farm. Um, book written, it says over here, from November, started on November 1943, and the book finished on February 1944. Actually, this book that I have is a special edition. I got it on those vintage bookshops. This book is actually the original from. There is few big impressions. There was the publication in 1954, 1959, 1960, and 1964. And this one I've got is from 1960, so this is an original from 1960, so it's very vintage, which I'm very now proud of having such a old. You can see it from close. But yeah, nothing in the back. Yeah. Anyways, um, what a great book. Reading this and with people listening and everything, and I'm very glad that there were many people in this compilation that have come to listen from the first reading, having now 44 views, which is a lot for this channel. And yeah, and all of them getting few views every day, maybe three or something like that. And it's all adding up to a lot. And I would like to thank everybody who's watching right now because that is growing this channel, and it's great that it's growing because I can then read to more people. And yeah. Um Anyways, I would like to say that I will start my next compilation of live readings, hopefully next week on Tuesday. Um, I have two books in mind, but The Republic by Plato, my book hasn't arrived yet, so I don't know exactly when it's going to arrive. But yeah, but I have another book in mind, Pompey the Great, about the story of Pompey the Great, you know, the general who fought Julius Caesar in the Civil War. He was a great general. That's not his only thing, but it's the most famous part of him because of Julius Caesar and all of that. But he was very influential person during there, one of the greatest generals in Roman history, without being Julius Caesar, of course, who beat him um, in the Civil War. But anyways, I'll see if there's anything else, and yeah, um, I'll get back to Enid Blyton's thing tomorrow when I don't have this live reading. So because lately now with the live reading, it's kind of tiring to be making to reading other things. Um, so I'll get back to the Enid Blyton, the Enchanted Wood, yes, tomorrow. It won't be live, but I suspect I might upload it around maybe 8, somewhere between 7 or 8, around that area, you know? So if you're interested in that, go check it out. I have the compilation for that too. The book isn't finished. There's like a big way to go, but we're going through that one slowly because it's a big book. It's got 400, 300 pages, so like more than double of this, 4 times more. Read that 3, 4 times more. So yeah, if you would like to give a final message in the chat, if you want to, if not, okay. Um, it's the I'll just see if anybody will give any message. Okay, okay, nothing yet. Okay, well, see you on next time I go live or next time you watch my video. See you then. Um, Bye, Nick. Bye. The moment your message went through, I said bye. Um, you probably didn't listen to this because, well, I don't know. You probably you don't enjoy this. I bet. But anyways, thanks for being here. That's greatly appreciated too. But anyways, if anybody else wants to give any message, be free to do so. If not, be free not to do so. Okay. Okay, well, bye bye then. Thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed my reading. I have some stumbles here and there from, I'm still kind of getting used to reading out loud. I don't normally read when I'm going before going to sleep out loud, like, yes, and then. But anyway, whoever is watching on the replay from the live, um, hope you enjoyed this because you got all the way till here to the final live reading, and if you are here, you probably listen to all the others. If you haven't, go check them out. I have this whole compilation. But yeah, before leaving, I'm going to add this to um my playlist for Animal Farm, and that is going to be the last one. Done. Okay, well, bye bye. See you next time.